Hello, everybody. Thanks for joining us today at the Print to Pixel podcast. I'm Dennis Kelly, CEO of Postalytics, and we're thrilled today to have as our guest Erica Waasdorp. Erica is the president of A Direct Solution, which is a consulting firm / agency that works with nonprofits on a variety of different programs. Erica, welcome to Print to Pixel.
Really excited to be here. Nice to see you, Dennis.
Nice to see you too. Erica is a longtime expert in the marketing world for nonprofits. She's known especially well for her ability to help nonprofits convert one-time donors into monthly donors. She's got a ton of experience and background to share with us today. Super excited to have you on board. And why don't we start out, though, before we get into all that? Let's hear about, how you got to where you are today. Give us your background. How did things evolve and enable you to become, president of A Direct Solution?
Yeah, great. Thanks so much. So I have been in the direct mail world for 41 years, a long time.
Wow.
I started out, I actually, in college, I did an internship at a bank, and I always thought I was going to work at a bank, and then figured out that that was not my calling. But I wrote a direct mail appeal and worked with a couple of branches and what have you. And then I applied for a job at Reader's Digest, sending a direct mail appeal, and I got the job, and that's where I really got hooked on direct mail. I saw how you could analyze, and we did a lot of analytics, obviously, at Reader's Digest. So and I have to add to that, that was in Amsterdam. So I'm
Oh,
Dutch
wow.
originally. Yes, so I'm Dutch originally, and so I worked in Amsterdam at Reader's Digest, and then after that, I worked for a number of different other publishing firms, international companies, and then I met my first husband, and eventually got married and moved to America in 31 years ago. And that's where I started working for an international animal welfare organization on Cape Cod. And that's where I started working on monthly giving. So in my Reader's Digest world, I was actually working on loyalty programs already, subscription type, models there. So it was not a strange move to move into monthly giving, and I did that in 6 countries. Believe it or not, we had a pretty big program. So and then after a number of years, I was looking at some new opportunities and started working for a direct marketing agency, helping nonprofits with their direct mail, and slowly moving into some monthly giving opportunities there as well, working with those nonprofits. And then in 2003, I saw the need for somebody like me offering, like, consultancy for some smaller to mid-sized organizations. So I started working in direct mail, and again kept writing and reading and even presenting on monthly giving. And then finally I remember I was at a I think it was actually the Bridge conference in 2010, and I was walking around and said, "Hey, they had a bookstore." I don't know if you remember what a bookstore looked like in those conferences, but some still have them, but most of them don't. But at the time, they had bookstores, and I was like, "Oh, I saw all these books about major giving and annual giving, but nothing on monthly giving." And I said, "Oh, maybe I need to write the book." So 2 years later, I wrote the book, Monthly Giving, The Sleeping Giant. And that was in the time before, online giving was starting to happen. Email campaigns were starting to happen, but most of the online forums did not yet have monthly giving built in. Now every single option is there, right? Every single system, no matter which one, has the recurring giving option built in. So, but yeah, so a lot has changed over the last 12 years for sure. And and then during COVID, I wrote a second book called Monthly Giving Made Easy, because again, you have the tools, you have the forums, you just got to get people to go there and drive them to ask to become a monthly donor. So, but meanwhile, still working with organizations on their direct mail campaigns, and adding in some monthly giving opportunities as well, because it all goes hand in hand, right? So now what I'm seeing a lot of organizations do is they might send a direct mail appeal and have an email follow up in conjunction with that, and even a text campaign and a telemarketing campaign, or you could do a postcard in conjunction with some of the other channels, right? So, so I think those are really they still work really really well. So, but it's all about, like, you got to ask the donor to consider a monthly gift.
Sure, sure.
So
Yeah,
that's been, again, I've been doing this for a long time. I'm getting old, so yeah. So, but it's great. It's good to see the successes that organizations have. So with it.
absolutely. And I guess we can say with quite a bit of certainty that you've written the book on monthly giving.
I've written two books. Yeah, yeah, and it's very exciting. I just worked with the Nonprofit Alliance, the TNPA, and I mean, it was a it was a bear of a project. I have to admit, it took about a year, but we worked with a number of like nonprofits on, and a couple of like partners, like system partners, especially on creating a sustainer frequently asked questions, best practices guide, especially on stewardship and retention and thank you messaging, things like that. So it's literally like, if you have a question about monthly giving, there may be an answer in that book. So so if you go to tmpa.org and you go to resources, you should be able to download that. So that was that just came out, so I helped with that.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So our audience is made up of marketers across a variety of industries. Nonprofit is definitely one of them. And one of the things that I find as I talk to experienced marketers like yourselves that have devoted their lives to a particular, we'll call it vertical industry, a lot of the principles that drive success around a particular industry are really universal.
Hmm.
And while the particular use case and the example might be unique, uh, the lessons I think you can take and apply to just about anything. And so as you're thinking about helping organizations uh, drive their monthly giving programs, you mentioned that you will often see a layering of email and text messaging and direct mail and other types of channels together.
Hmm.
How do you go about laying out a framework and starting that process with a smaller mid-sized nonprofit, right? Where maybe they haven't done that too much in the past and not that comfortable, they're not that familiar with that overlay of different channels. How do you kick that off and how do you help them understand a process to start and grow?
Yeah, great question. So it's, and I, I have to add to it. I also work with some larger organizations, but I mean, my main focus was small to mid-size when I got involved in like the direct mail support, if you will. But it's more, every single monthly donor program is really tailor made, because every organization is different. So the first step I always work with organizations on is, okay, how many snail mail names do you have? How many email names do you have? How many phone numbers do you have? What do you know about your donors? What database do you use? What online platform do you use for your gift? So we start with sort of like a couple of basic questions, and then say, okay, well, how often do you communicate with your donors? Because again, every organization is different. I mean, there's a lot of smaller organizations that they might send like one email a month. and they never call their donors other than maybe to thank their $1,000 and up, right? So you first need to make an inventory of like what are they doing now, how often are they communicating with their donors, and then say, okay, what can we do to build in the opportunity to ask for a monthly gift? So and a lot of times there's a lot of low hanging fruit, if you will, for many organizations, even some of the larger ones, to say, okay, well, hey, if I'm sending emails, well, you can add a button and ask for a monthly gift in addition to asking for a one time gift, for example. So there's a lot of opportunities there. So that's where we always start. It's like, okay, well, what are you doing now? How often? What more could we do? So, say if they're like sending one email a month, and it's usually an email newsletter that has 10 different bullet points on it, well, maybe add, one more email every month and make that a special focus. So, one month it could be talking about making a monthly gift. The next month it could be making a legacy gift. So again, we're kind of like saying, okay, what are some of the opportunities? Because the hardest thing with monthly giving is I think the aligning of what's the goal, and monthly giving is a long term game, if you will, right?
Mhm.
So it takes time. It may not necessarily pay off right away in terms of time invested. I mean, like especially if you have a smaller donor base, or you have like a small number of emails. Like so it might take a little bit of time to grow. As opposed to a lot of organizations, they need to have that immediate revenue, and they can get that from one-time gifts, right? So it's like, okay, so it's a constant seesawing, if you will. Like, we want one time, we want monthly, we want both. I mean, how do you customize that, so that it becomes a win-win for the organization, it becomes a win-win for the donor as well, right? So, because monthly giving is really donor centric, it's really allowing a donor to give in a way that they can afford to do it, because donors want to help. That's a universal, to your point. It's like it's a universal thing that people want to help people, right? People want to help solve problems, and we just have to give the donor the some ideas of how they can make that difference, how they can help. And monthly giving might be something that somebody on a fixed income especially is more comfortable with than writing, $100 or $250 check.
Sure, sure.
Yeah.
That makes a ton of sense. And really what you're doing is you're helping the organization define their their offer, right?
Right. Hmm.
And helping them understand their audience a little bit more, right?
Right.
So as you said, maybe you've got a high percentage of your audience that are on a fixed income, and it's about tailoring your ask to
Hmm.
the particular audience, and then enabling the organization to do well. It struck me what you said about that sort of tension between you know the one time give kind of blast of revenue coming in, cash flow, versus the kind of slower build,
Yep.
the drip drip
Right.
drip of the
Yep.
monthly.
Yep.
And I think that's something that every marketer struggles with as well, right?
Yeah.
Uh, CEO, the board of directors, they're driving marketing. How many leads did you get this month?
Yep.
How many,
Yep.
how many sales are we generating off of these leads right now, right?
Hmm. Yep.
And where at the end of the day, the most valuable thing a marketer can do is build a brand,
Right.
and a brand takes a long time to build.
Yeah.
And
Yeah. Yeah.
as that brand is being built, sales are easier, revenue's easier to get. All those things happen, but they don't
Yeah.
happen unless you invest in that longer.
Well, and I think that's, and again, in the old days, I mean, when I started out in multi giving, I mean, it was mail and phone. those were the two channels really. So because online did not exist, right? Emails did not exist. Now social media didn't exist, right? So a lot of these channels that we have now, connected TV, face to face fundraising was just starting to come up, right? So a lot of these channels didn't exist. So now they're there, but you just gotta. So it's not so much a money investment, at least not at first. It's more a time investment. But I think the other piece is like, and again, I have gray hair of like, how do we make this case to the finance folks and the CEOs and the directors and the different nonprofits to say, look, if you just know that the average monthly gift is $25 a month, that's $300 a year, and the average lifetime value of a monthly donor is like they that's like 8 years. So that's $2,400, right? So oh, okay, it might be worth a little bit of time to invest in a $2,400 donor than in a $50 one-time donor that you losing next year unless you do something, right? So but it's been a process to say, how do we align that long-term messaging into the mix.
Sure,
But
sure.
having said that, again, the investment of time is much more relevant than the investment in money, because you can build in a monthly giving ask in your direct mail appeal. I mean, that's pretty much become best practice, right? So every time you send an appeal to your non-monthly donors, ask them to consider a monthly gift, right? And there's so much we can do with segmentation, right? And personalization for certain segments in your direct mail. So again, you can really, really, really customize that approach to ask for a monthly gift to, say, just those donors that are giving less than $250. So you don't you downgrade your donors, right? So there's a lot of things that you can do, but they take a little bit of time and thinking through. But once you've done it, I mean, it's like, yeah, you just keep doing it, right, and keep doing more of it. And I think that's like what we're seeing with those organizations that are successful with it. They keep doing it and they keep doing more of it, right? And then, I mean, again, if we look at like what happened last week with the global IT outage, well, guess what? Like your monthly donors. I mean, if you say you couldn't, I don't know, I haven't really heard anything about for those organizations that were depending on their online emails that day and what they lost in revenue potentially, right? Maybe nothing, but I mean, I'm sure there's some that have lost something. So it's like, well, if you were depending on like bringing in $100,000 that day, well, if you had monthly donors, you didn't have to worry about it because that money was coming in, right? So, and again, I was there during 9/11. And a lot of these organizations were not able to get out in the mail, and or they were worried about it. So and that monthly revenue kept coming in. So
Yeah.
it certainly convinced my organization to say, "Oh, wow, I had no idea this keeps coming in no matter what happens. Okay, great. Let's do more of that," right? So, but sometimes it takes something bad to happen that makes people realize, "Oh, we need to work on these long-term donors because again, they're our future. They're also going to leave you in their will, right? So there's a higher likelihood that they will do that, and it's also part of that community building that you as an organization uh, have. You're creating a community of regular givers that really care and invest in your organization.
Yeah,
So
yeah. That's really powerful when you can build that community and people feel like they've got a stake
yeah.
in the success of the thing that they are, in this case,
Yeah,
donating
and
to.
it was just like, I mean, I was talking to an animal organization early on during COVID, right during the pandemic, and they said, "Wow, it's great! Like we have people call our monthly donors are calling us up and say, 'What can I do to help?'" hey, can I upgrade my gift? What do you need? Because I know that you're struggling right now, so, and they were just blown away by what was going on. And the community of multi donors was very, very, very supportive. So they
Excellent.
care. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. We've talked about really diversification of the revenue streams coming from the segmentation work that you do. Um, we talked about kind of diversifying across lots of different channels and touching them. What are some of the pain points that you run into when you're beginning working with an organization and you're going to be implementing some of this kind of segmentation work and then diversifying across the different channels? What are the pain points that you typically will run into, and how do you help organizations overcome them?
Yeah. I mean, the biggest pain point, and you've probably heard this, is silos. Silos in organizations. And it's actually smaller organizations have less of that, right? So, because they are like, okay, I'm the one or two direct, development department, and we can implement this. But it's silos. It's like the development department wants to do something, but then the web is owned by somebody else in the communications department or the marketing department, and they have a different schedule, right? So I think that that's a big pain point. Or the direct mail is handled by one person, and the online is handled somewhere else, and the telemarketing is handled by yet a third person, and they might have different bosses. And so again, trying to get that all on the same page can be a big challenge, especially in some of the bigger organizations. And I think the other piece is, even as agencies, there's a lot of, like, digital agencies. There's a lot of direct mail agencies, and consultants that say, well, we're evaluated on that immediate revenue, and so it's not in our best interest to just think about getting recurring donors. And I said, well, yeah, but you can, so you have to almost like budget a little bit different and saying, okay, yeah, but if you bring in 100 recurring donors, they're worth, this, right? And so you're still like, if you just evaluate them on that short term and that long term revenue combined, you're doing overall better, right? But it's again, it's a mind set change that needs to happen, I think, across the industry.
Across
And
all the
it's
different functional
and
areas?
and I mean, I was doing some scanning recently, of organizing some of my old articles and magazines, and I've been presenting and writing about direct mail and monthly giving for a long time, and I came across some of these older articles, and it's like, from colleagues, and it's like, oh my god, yeah, they're saying exactly the same thing. And oh yeah, they're doing this, but no, they're still not doing this, and they're still not doing this. And so, and that was 20 years ago, right? So it takes a long time to change sometimes. And in
Well,
all these years I've been doing this, I still haven't quite figured out what it is that needs to happen. I think unless you have worked on monthly giving programs and you've seen the power yourself. But there's not that many specialists that in the industry, to be honest, for some reason. So it's an interesting challenge for sure.
yeah,
So,
yeah.
but
I would
silos is
imagine.
a big one,
I would
and
imagine.
budgeting
Yeah,
evaluations. Yeah,
getting the kind of buy-in and real push
yeah,
from the
yeah.
C-suite, the from leadership, is probably most of the time in a lot of organizations. That's how walls get broken down and silos end up going away. Is when it's coming
Yeah, and
from the top.
it needs to be like, top down, bottom up, right? So, and I know, like, a lot of times people say, oh, Charity Water, it's great what they're doing, and they're a wonderful organization, right? But what people don't necessarily realize is that they have purposely said in 2015, saying, we love these one time donors, but we really, 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 really want to focus on monthly donors. And they, pulled out all the stops, and that's what everybody is focused on. So it's like one time gifts are great. It's kind of like, yeah, it's a little bit of like gravy, but our bread and butter is in these monthly donors, right? And they, again, everybody was on board with that, but that's not that common, to be
Yeah,
honest.
yeah. Well, there's some parallels there between what you're talking about with the silos and the different programs that are owned by different parts of the organization, and what we've seen in the direct mail world, where from a marketing channel standpoint, direct mail has always been kind of its own thing,
Hmm.
and it's been run by people that have a lot of knowledge and a lot of specialty information about printing and postage, and you know um, and then how direct mail programs work. And what we started Postalytics really to try to bring direct mail into the multi-channel, omni-channel marketing world, and really by starting with a strategy of connecting direct mail to the CRM and marketing
Hmm.
automation tools that are driving all the other channels,
Hmm.
so
Hmm.
that direct mail can have a seat at the table with email and with digital and with social and the website, right? And so that it is a part, the data is flowing back and forth between direct mail and those core systems that are driving everything. And so,
Right.
knocking down those barriers and those silos and pulling it all together, we believe is the key for marketers of any organization, whether it's nonprofit or for profit.
Right.
You've got to have a coordinated approach
Right.
where you're using, in our case, the channels for the things
Yeah.
that they do best, right?
Yeah.
But across all of your marketing, it has to
Yeah, because the
be
donor doesn't realize that you have silos. The
right.
donor gets all
Nor do
these
they care.
messages, and they don't care, right? So, but they just want to get an answer when they call somebody, right? So or when they send an email, they want to have a response, right? So yes, yeah, no, I think that's a really valid point. Yeah.
Great, great. Well, to wrap up, Erica, one of the things I love to ask our guests is to relay a story or tell us about a person who's had a big influence on your career, and the way that you kind of think about this whole process.
Wow, that's a great question. I mean, I think I'd Reader's Digest. I had a mentor who really challenged me to be very analytical, and so I think that was, and then I think kind of like sort of the monthly donor gurus before me, if you will. Harvey McKinnon, Ken Burnett from the UK. I mean, again, where I grew up in the Netherlands, I love the international piece. So I mean, Sean Triner from Oceanic. I mean, Tom Ahern. From so there's a lot of people that I love. Julia Campbell from Social. And email, and so there's a lot of people I follow and admire and learn from. So yeah, I mean this not really one. I mean my dad. I mean that would be my top mentor, obviously, because
Cool.
he
Yeah.
always said one of the things was like, hey, you can do anything you set your mind to. So I think that was obviously the biggest motivator there. But yeah, I mean there's a lot of great people in this industry, a lot of great people that have been doing this for a while, that care, and they want to make a difference. They want to help nonprofits and other verticals as well to succeed, and they're willing to learn and share. I think that's why I like the nonprofit world, especially like we love sharing. We love sharing because, again, every organization is different. So, what works for an animal organization may or may not work for a human services organization. But if I share it, or we talk to each other, then we can try it and see how that works for them, right? So I think
Speaking
the
of
sharing is
sharing,
big. Yeah,
yeah, yeah.
yeah,
The you mentioned earlier a conference, and the Bridge Conference is coming up right outside of
Yep.
Washington, D.C.
Yep.
At the end of this month, beginning of August. And that's really one of the nonprofit industry's
Top.
most
Yeah.
important events where
And I go there to
you come and
learn.
share, right?
Yes.
And you hear the stories
Yep.
about what's working, what's
Yes.
not working,
Yes.
and I know you're going to be there. Postalytics
Yep.
is going to be there.
Yep.
I'd encourage any nonprofit organizations to go. First of all, I've been there several times, and it's an outstanding conference. And then look up Erica, look up Postalytics. We want to help, and
Yep.
we've got great tools and experiences to give nonprofits a hand and help you with your mission. And
Yeah.
it's so much fun working with mission-driven people and
Mm-hmm.
organizations, right, that are
Mm-hmm.
really trying to make a difference in the world. It's really rewarding for everybody involved.
Yeah. Yeah, and I mean, like I said, I mean, I've always loved the Bridge Conference. I go there to learn. I'll probably be hanging out in the sustainer like focus sessions because I love to learn. And again, that's why I always say I love learn. I learn from the nonprofits probably more than they learn from me. So, but yeah, and then I can share out that what I learn, right? So I think that's the key. And one of the things I want to just like mention that, and I'd like to actually invite other consultants and agencies to think about this is like, I'm getting older. Um, we're all getting older. We've all been doing this for quite a while. We have a lot of experience, but it's up to us to bring some of the younger fundraisers and industry professionals, if you will, along. And I actually created a scholarship fund to start helping nonprofits that want to go to the Bridge Conference or to some other like direct marketing conference or fundraising 101 or something like that to say, okay, well, hey, this it's up to us to train some of the younger folks. And there's a lot of people that want to learn, but sometimes their organizations don't have the money. So I think it's up to if you're a fundraising consultant or an agency or whatever, and you're like listening and saying, hey, maybe you should consider doing that. It doesn't have to be much, but it's just something to say, hey, because we're not necessarily going to all be around forever, but we need these missions to continue, and because the need is great. So I think that's the key.
Absolutely, absolutely. Well, Erica, your career story is interesting and different. Congratulations on carving out a great career in this business. The work that you do and supporting the industry is important. And if folks want to get in touch with you and learn more about what you do at a direct solution, how you help organizations, learn more about your scholarship fund, how
Mhm.
would our listeners and viewers track you down and get in touch with you?
Yeah, so the easiest would be Erica, Erica, at adirectsolution.com. So again, my website, adirectsolution.com. And you can download, resources. But yeah, if you want to find out more, just feel free to send me an email, Erica at adirectsolution.com.
Excellent, excellent. Or look you up at the Bridge Conference.
Yes, I'll see you next week. Yeah,
Awesome. All
great.
right. Well,
Thanks.
Erica Waasdorp, thanks so much. It's been a real pleasure having you on today, and we'll look forward to seeing you very soon.
Great. Thanks. Thanks
Bye
again
bye.
for having me.